Present.
Commissioner Taylor,
Present.
Commissioner Miyagi.
Here.
Okay, I'm here, so we're called to order. Any requests? Any requests for changes? Anything different? Nope. All okay. All right. Any oral communications? Nope. Okay. All right. So we had the one action item in the last month's meeting about the public safety building. You guys want to have a quick look at that? Approve the minutes. I move to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are approved. Commissioner Gordon is here.
Thank you.
Okay, so staff comments.
Sure. So I just wanted to make sure.
Oops, thank you. Yeah, my bad.
What's the date for it? It's May 16th.
So it's over the course of several days, and we're getting ready to send it out to our partners at Canopy as well. And so the slots will fill up rather quickly because of the small site, and we're only doing a couple trees at a time, and there will be some scaffolding on site. We're limited on the number of people we can accommodate to assist the artist at a time. Nadia has a sign-up sheet here, if any of you would like to sign up this evening, and put it in your calendar while you're here and have your calendars open. And then another fun thing that just took place, and of course Chair McDowell was there, and I think we have some pictures, was the VMware unveiling for the sculpture there. Daniel Wintrick. And there they are. All the employees pulled back the big parachute for the piece. 7:04. And if you go, so there are some very cool shots that were taken after the event as well. So if you go to Daniel Wintrick's site, he's got more of them on there. But that's another public art and private development that was just unveiled. So we're thrilled to see it out and live. So, and that's it for staff comments. Did you want to add anything about the VMware event?
I'd just say it was a lot of fun. The artist was very excited, and Daniel did a great kind of grounding in the thinking for the piece. He talked about if you think about seeing the Baylands in kind of an aerial view, how they sort of snake along through here, and that was sort of part of the inspiration. He talked about fractals, which I barely understand, but I think it appealed to the VMware crowd. And it was part of their 20th anniversary as a company. So it was kind of fun to see the dedication of the campus, and they had their CEO and their head of HR and all the real estate folks and the whole team, the architects, the landscape people, the Stanford folks, their landlords were all there. So it was a lot of fun. The piece looks beautiful. And I think actually at night it's even more impressive. It was interesting to see it. Yeah. So I think it went well.
And we're able to visit the piece. Is the campus closed in the evening, or is it open, do you know?
In the evening, I'm not clear.
You can pull up the driveway.
Yeah, you could probably pull up the driveway and no one will shoo you off for a minute or two. But it's right next to where, if you're visiting the campus, where you would either go to turn around, drop someone off, call a car, or sign in to get a guest pass. So it is accessible to the public. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a few different action items tonight. The first one is the downtown garage and the recommendation of an approval of an artwork by Amy Landisberg.
And
So for this item, I am asking Joe to take over since he's the project manager for this project.
Thank you. So this is for the downtown parking garage next. This will be a new 5-level above-ground public parking garage with a basement level as well. 338 spaces, 2,200 square feet at Hamilton and Waverly next. And you can see here from the street view that it's will be on the footprint of an existing single-level parking lot. Next. And so this is the architect's design for the parking garage that was presented at the last ARB meeting on February 15th. Next.
The design, just so you know, it's not finalized, it's still in flux. So this is where it stands at the moment,
Right.
just to clarify.
Right, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. This is a different view from Hamilton Avenue next, and from Gilman, looking at the vehicle entrance there, which is, and this is I think a future potential inclusion of photovoltaic panels, which will not be part of the complete building when it's done, but it's planned for the future.
Who's the architect?
Ken?
It's Ken Hayes,
Yeah.
in partnership with, God, now I'm blanking, but
Is it Watry Design?
Watry
Yeah.
Design.
So the project goals for the public art for this building are to integrate artwork that reflects the character of the downtown corridor and increase wayfinding. So after a artist selection process, Amy Landesberg was chosen for this project. I should say, going back to the previous slide, though, for a second, please, and back one more. At the February 15th ARB meeting, members of the Architectural Review Board thought that this design was too uniform. A couple members referred to it as looking like a prison. They thought that it was too vertically linear and very uniform, as if it was all, one big block, I think. They wanted the perforated screen to be more beautiful and more complex, and that's where the public art can help.
And can you clarify for them where that perforated screen is, because they may not recognize
Yes.
it in the renderings?
Sorry, the perforated screen is above the column, which is directly above the vehicular entrance there. And if you, right,
It's all of these colored screens that you can sort of see through.
and the brick red,
Two sides on that corner and here.
can you go back one more? And one more. So this is the column above the enclosed staircase is also perforated panel. And the brick red color that you see are vertical fins that are open to allow ventilation
So there are two.
to two different,
Yes.
right, two different services. Correct.
Where the AT&T building is, right next door, that's that alley where
Another comment,
Which is this building. Yeah.
right. Another comment by the ARB was that the vertical staircase, the enclosed staircase was too large. And so this is potentially going to be reduced in size. They intend to reduce that in the next iteration of the design, but that hasn't happened yet. Mhm. So, Amy Landesberg was chosen to be the artist for this project, and we have a few examples of her previous work, which shows you her use of sunlight as an element that changes and animates her work at different times of day and also different times of the year. Her work will look different depending on how the sun hits it. Also showing here in this piece her use of patterns, using man-made materials that mimic movement and patterns in the natural world.
these are the Hyundai taillights, right?
Yeah, this is a rental car parking garage at the San Diego airport. And one more piece showing her use of pattern is a recurring theme in her work, and reflective surfaces, architectural glass. So next, so we're going to show you now her conceptual design for this downtown garage project, which she entitled Tapestry. Next. So she's put a lot of work, a lot of time and effort into developing her design. And she's landed on the use of maps as a big element of this design. This is a very early map representation of Palo Alto, as you can see. Next. And this is a contemporary map of Palo Alto, the blue outline showing the city limits of Palo Alto, and the red rectangle showing the downtown area, which includes where the downtown parking garage will be located. Next. And we're going to show you a bunch of different versions and views of Palo Alto in different kinds of maps. So this is a very long shot of a topographic map of Palo Alto, and you can barely tell at that scale. This is using a light source to show, like a three-dimensional illusion of the city, and you can see how flat that upper portion is relative to the lower and left portion. The dramatic rise from below zero at, right down by the bay up to 2,200 feet elevation within the city limits. Next. And this is yet another version of a map of this area. And next, yet another one.
And what's really fun is, part of the joy of working with Amy is that she comes from an architectural background, and she's great with the modeling, and she loves doing all the these various renderings. And we can't make it do this for you, but she likes to make that thing spin around, so it really shows you the contours, and that the elevations actually corresponded also with this heat map, which I thought was kind of an interesting addition. I also just want to clarify, as we go forward with the renderings, they're concept renderings, so they're sketches. There may be more elements, fewer elements, but it's really just to present the concept. So I just want to throw that out there as well. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. So another version showing the dramatic and what Amy refers to as like luscious, beautiful imagery in the topographic view of Palo Alto. Next. And so here you can see her trying to bring this topographic view of the city onto the building. Next. And different view still, different version of that. Next. You can see the three different sections of the Palo Alto topography that she's selected for the three different sections of perforated screen on the building. Next. So here is one of those sections, a little closer in, and those elements that look like kind of like solid blocks are actually numbers. They're the number of feet in elevation, right? Next. And from the very beginning, Amy has been trying to bring in imagery from the natural world. She started off with these images of like eclipses, evoking imagery of the sun and the moon, very basic natural world images that she wanted to use in some way. And Elise and I requested that she somehow make this more unique to this particular site, to the city of Palo Alto, which I think she's successfully done. Next. And she talked about in her research, her extensive research of all the different maps that she could lay her hands on of Palo Alto, the earliest ones in California and of this area were stitched tapestries. And so she really, that really resonated with her, the tapestry, the stitching from these early California maps, and also then bringing in her semicircles evoking the eclipses, the sun and the moon, her use of glass in the past, and you can see her starting to develop these stitch-like imagery. And then there's also a sample of stainless steel there to the bottom right. Next. And so bringing all these elements together, this is what she came up with. And this is a modified version of the old tapestry stitched maps combined with her use of architectural glass and the topographic maps, and customizing the perforated screens. Each one of those holes that you're seeing, or those dots and the dotted lines, might be perforations in a screen, and this is not the material, but it's something similar to what would be used on this building. And these perforated screens can be customized. There's still more development to do, more discussion with the manufacturer of the screens to figure out how best to do that. But this is, so then here are her 3 sections of topography that she's extracted from that map. Next. And this is using her stainless steel and glass stitching to suggest the change in elevation in a 3-dimensional and a 2-dimensional way at the same time.
She also spoke of these not only just as a stitch, but also like an artist's sketch. So she said, I don't want you to get the idea that it's super scientific as far as it being exact, a 1/4 inch on this is a true measure of the elevation change, that it's the artist's interpretation of the elevation changes. And the red is just easy for her to render. She's not wedded to that color. She wants it to be something warm, but again, it's a placeholder. So thinking about those elements as sketches.
And so each one of those elements where you see red would be cathedral glass that was enclosed in that arc of stainless steel. And they're set at such an angle, they're angled in this direction and also in this direction away from the face to make them hopefully impossible for a pigeon to even land on, let alone nest in. They're like arcs, and so they're going to be thin arcs that would be angled like this, of course, on the
Angled down and
Right.
over like this.
yes, thank you. Right.
Yes.
And so here they are above the vehicle entrance and above the staircase in both views, and then finally wrapping around the enclosed staircase. And we really feel like this breaks up those vertical masses that the ARB objected to. Makes those oppressive lines something much more complex and beautiful, which is something that they specifically requested. And I feel like it stretches her budget of $190,000 really far, to cover this enormous area, and provides a wayfinding in terms of making this a really unique, very distinctive, recognizable building.
And so what we're asking this evening, keeping in mind this is a sketch, the number of elements may go up or down as we get into detailed design and getting all the estimates and how much of the construction budget we might be able to leverage to help with the art. So we wanted to bring this to you for approval to move forward with more detailed design and gather any input that you might have, any feedback that you might have that we can carry back to the artist as we get into more detailed design.
Maybe a stupid question. Is this Cal Ave?
No, this is on Hamilton.
Okay, right here, so, okay.
This is, just to orient you, it is directly across from the post office building, next to the AT&T building, and there's the church on the other side, which when Amy went into it and saw the stained glass, that also
No.
inspired her to want to incorporate glass into this project.
I really like her design. I think it ties together the wayfinding they were talking about with the maps, and I think she did a really good job on the maps and how to put them up there, and the colors and stuff, so I think it's gonna be visually striking to that. One question I have, though, is those fins, can something be done with those fins artistically? Can they be movable, something?
Are you referring to the fins on the other part of the building?
Yeah, those brick red fins, can they, something be,
There, because of the constraints of the building, and there are other adjacent buildings right behind it, it has to be open, otherwise it has to be mechanically ventilated, which drives up the cost significantly. So some of that is to mask some of the,
right,
you
right,
know, the
okay.
parking without
I understand
closing
about
it.
them being open, but can they be painted maybe? I don't know, something done other than to just have them like that? Maybe, maybe movable some way, so a few movable, so as the air blows through, they can shift with the wind, that sort of stuff. And even more, break up the uniformity of the building and not just have it just on either end, but also in the middle to have some other artistic part done on those vents. But I really like her design.
Okay.
Everyone's looking very quiet.
Actually, I have some clarifying questions. So the material you shared with us, that's going to be the backdrop, that's going to be the canvas, right?
Right.
And then-
Something similar to that.
And then on top of it, you're going to be essentially adding relief-like pieces on top of it. And some of them will be visual with stained glass elements, but the baseline is going to be another variation of that type of metal material, so it will be two color combination with shades?
Right, so that will be about a 5/16 inch thick panel. And the part of the topographic lines will be made with putting the holes in places where we want them.
Okay.
And we haven't decided yet whether the lines, you know, if there's, if those did not create enough ventilation, enough open area for the ventilation that they need, we may end up with holes in the negative space and have the lines, you know, be put on
Etched
with
somehow
paint
or chemical.
etching or anodizing or something like that. We haven't resolved that yet because we need to do more research about that. The stainless steel stitches would be elements that would be bolted on, so they would be bolted through the screen, and including the ones that have glass in them.
And those pieces will be manufactured, right?
Right, Amy would be creating those, and they would be stainless steel. This material, we think, is going to be aluminum.
Oh, I see.
Which this is.
And they will have, I imagine, a number of different sizes?
They're probably going to be like a standard panel. I think they were 4 by 12 was the size, but
Do you mean the panels or the pieces that are
The
added on?
pieces that are added
The
on.
pieces that are added on are different sizes. Right now, she's playing with 5 different sizes, I believe.
I see. And
So
then-
that she can build that growth showing as you go up in elevation and back down.
Got it, okay. Thank you so much.
Of course.
So, yeah, it's funny, looking at these, I was hoping that the treatment we were gonna see was something that worked with the fins and not with the corners of the building. And thinking of the fins, you could do something possibly where as you walk past it in one direction, you see one thing, you walk past it in another direction based on the angles of the fins. There's some, because it is sort of a big monolithic building. But if we've made the decision to work with these, one of the questions I had was, in the architectural renderings, and I guess I get it that they're not finished, it showed, I think what it was, 9 or 12, kind of like, you know, the grid. And this shows something that is one all of a piece screen. This is a lot nicer to look at than something that would be broken up into a bunch of individual panels. Is the treatment that we're anticipating this, or is it segmented, like it looks like it has a grid that you've dropped over the top of it?
so it will be made up of multiple panels, simply because there's no other way to do it. They can't manufacture a single panel that big. But the seams will be not very noticeable. The artistic elements will span the seams.
Okay.
And the topographic lines will, continue through those seams. The goal will be to make it look as if it is one canvas,
no.
each surface.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to see that something that's, 25 by 50 is gonna be all of one piece, but in the initial one you showed us, it looked like the frame was maybe they're 6 inch, anyway, so it sounds like they're gonna be butted against each other.
Yeah, I believe so.
They will be butted against each other, and there's already been discussion with the design team about how to minimize any appearance of the support mechanism behind it, those
Yep.
beams and whatnot behind it, to camouflage it as much as possible. So, we're definitely working on that.
And that
Yeah.
may be accomplished by painting those framing elements, or, treating them in the same color that the panels are. Or, if the panels are to be butted against each other, then perhaps painting them a dark gray or dark black so they just kind of go away and are not seen through the perforations as well.
And the piece that you're showing here is perforated the entire surface. What you described was something where the perforations that we would see would be where you'd see the lines.
Right.
And so is the rest of it just, it's a solid plate?
Yeah, the artist would provide files to the manufacturer of the screens.
And then they'd
so
work
that they
machine
could,
it.
yeah, they could,
So we're exploring that, we have to see what it looks like and if there's enough open space
Yeah,
in the
that's what I was gonna
screens to
ask.
make it fly. Otherwise, there could be other ways to do it, to have the lines, as Joe mentioned, etched into it a different way and not just rely on the holes for that. So that's something that, as we get into detailed design, that we have to work out with the manufacturer and the design team.
Is on the corners, the places, see, if you did something where it has a lot of little, it's one solid piece, I was sort of wondering about the way the light will come through. And if you come in through on a bright morning, it looks like a Hitchcock, where you have all this kind of crazy light that's coming through as you go up the stairs, and may not play as well as if it were to be something more like that, where it would be more muted. I don't know, is that something you guys talked about? I'd want to just think about, what does it look like on the inside on different light conditions?
We're definitely mindful of what the user experience is going up that stairwell, so I'll make sure we bring that back with the team too.
Okay.
The other question I have is the combination of the metal and red. Those are the two colors I'm seeing. How does that play against the backdrop of the building's colors?
So, the red is not, as Elise mentioned earlier, it's not necessarily the final color. She would like it to be in the orange-red spectrum somewhere. And the color of the panels is still being negotiated as well with the architect. The architect proposed them to be a bronze color, which the artist is fine working with that, making the stainless steel elements that she's going to come up with contrast with the bronze color so that they will distinguish themselves from the background. But we're still working on resolving that. As Elise mentioned, the building is undergoing a revision in design in response to the ARB's comments, and so that's something that hasn't been fully resolved yet.
How locked are we on, like, could the design change in such a way that we're not working with these two areas of the building anymore? I mean, could it be something, I mean, what's your understanding of the feedback to the overall design? Or could we be looking at something where we've got a concept that we approve and that the building changes completely?
I don't think so, not at this point, as far as we know. I think the enclosed staircase is probably going to recede a little away from the street.
Okay.
Other than that, and I think the perforated screen panels may change to better suit the artwork, to make them more of a continuous canvas for the artwork. There was also talk about possibly moving the front of the building back 7 feet.
Okay, so nothing that would change the overall.
But the ARB was enthusiastic to see that artwork was going up there, but we didn't have anything to show them, especially before we come to the Public Art Commission to get feedback. So, But they, that's where their comments on the screens came. They know it needs to be open, they need the ventilation, but can't we do something more creative with it? And so we let them know that actually the artist is planning to work on those screens. So, so I think it will, fingers crossed,
Yep.
work.
I guess the feedback, I mean, I like it, I don't love it, I mean, to be honest with you. I guess there are some constraints I think that you just have to manage through. I'd love to see something to the extent that you do something with, I mean, she has some other things where her color palette was a little richer, but just like steel and red glass, to the extent that she could think about things where the color palette is a bit more varied.
I was.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Jim. Do you
no,
want
go ahead.
I think you probably read.
said it really
You
well.
read, yeah, you kind of read my. I mean, I was feeling the same way. It's like I want to make a comment, but I would like to see more. I don't know exactly really what that more is, but I feel like there needs to be some sort of like a pop, and I don't see it quite yet. So.
No, Jim, very, very eloquently put. I find the whole thing so aggressively bland, I can't even like conjure any emotion about it. Ken Hayes is like ubiquitous around the city, and it's like his style has become architecturally the signature of Palo Alto, and that's not what we're debating tonight, but I guess when I think of parking garages, which I also dislike, and successful ones, I think of the San Jose airport because it's whimsical and waving at me and making me have some happiness about having to drive in there and find a parking spot. Having said that, though, she seems to be a very talented, very creative artist, and I think having to work within a constraint like this, she's done a lot. But yeah, I guess I would just sort of second the feedback that it looks good. It's just very hard. It's enhancing the building, which is kind of bland to begin with. And so I am not knocking her. I'm not knocking any of it. It's just that when we talk about art and when we want to make impactful statements with city dollars, it would be nice if it was a little more noticeable without a lot of explanation and metal and holes and all of that sort of stuff that I know is necessary, but, yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenge to work with the mechanical constraints of a parking garage,
Absolutely.
and also, of course, as always, with an architect who has a color palette already picked out. He's trying to play off the adjacent buildings, and
Yeah, you got
so
the
he's gone
the
with
roofs
this.
that are tile, and so
Yeah.
he's trying to play off with the Birch Clark building across the street. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to, I don't know if, I don't want to have her do too much work, but I feel like her rendering, considering what Elise was saying, that she's very kind of talented in terms of like, playing around with the renderings. I don't know if there's a way she can change the renderings to make them look a little bit more realistic, so to speak, because that's where I'm having trouble. It looks too, stoic, and I know it could be more, but it's hard to visualize. So.
And I think that's part of what I was trying to communicate, and that it's a sketch. So you're not seeing what that metal is going to look like against the bronze because we haven't received the samples. And she definitely wants to have that pop, having the two different metals play off of each other and the shadow and incorporating glass. She's also very cognizant of the fact that this is an extremely limited budget and she's stretching it pretty far, but we can also take her the feedback that if the stairwell shrinks and there's opportunity to maybe bump up a little more glass and a little more color, to do that. And also in thinking about how those lines come through too, so.
Right.
Is the, Joe, is the, do you have a sense of what the relief is? Like so this is all one flat plane. Are the pieces that come off, are the scale of them, is it, you said they're 5 sizes, so they're big.
Yeah, so I
So they're
think
really big. So this
40
is protruding like 3 feet off the wall, or how?
The largest ones
42 inches would be the diameter of the circle.
with the glass.
Right.
Okay, that's very different.
Keep in mind, yeah, you're looking at the scale of, I believe it's a 5-story parking structure.
Yeah, okay.
So,
So there's a lot of relief. So I think the idea
Yes.
that, because the whole thing is so rectilinear, it's just like a cage. And if you have something that looks more undulating, and if it's 42-inch pieces, I'd say that's great. If the extent that you can use those to give a sense of the thing being more, not kinetic, but just that it softens the really, because those fins just make it look, I don't know, like an engine block or something.
Yeah.
And so I think that the interplay between those, the more organic shapes and the fins will be good.
And the smallest stitch would be 12 inches diameter, like
Okay.
of the arc, you know, so in the long dimension, and 42 inch being the largest. And part of the day, and this will vary from one season to the next. In the winter, it will get the most sunlight. In the summer, the least. But in the early part of the day, this will get direct sunlight on the face of the building. And when that's happening, the light passing through those glass arcs is going to create a really dramatic, beautiful reflection as the sun passes through the red glass. And that's going to reflect on the perforated screen material behind it. And depending on how long the shadows are, you know, quite a bit below it as well. And that'll change as the day goes on. In the afternoon, the sun will go behind the face of the building, and so it won't get sun anymore. So
and
you know,
you'll,
that's kind of go ahead.
you'll notice most of the glass elements are toward the top of the pieces for that reason, so that the red, it'll catch more of the light of the more silver neutral tone, right, the silver toned pieces below,
And at
was some
night-
of the thinking.
So at nighttime, is there gonna be lighting, or are we, that was my other question, so.
We've discussed that, and we haven't, you know, because this is a design proposal at this point, we haven't, you know, started discussing with the architects what kind of lighting and where it's gonna be located until the design is resolved. But yes, we have discussed that, and that's a possibility to have lighting either, probably above, because uplighting is, you know, prohibited, right? Because we don't want light pollution. But I think on the outside, raking across it, to create some of those red reflections, the light passing through the red glass.
And this is all very,
Possibility.
Joe, this is all very matte in the way it's done, with the exception of the red glass. Is the intent that you, maybe you don't know, but, and I'm curious what people think. Would you want to see something that's more polished steel or stainless, or is it matte? What's the,
Actually, in this,
In the slide with the stitches, you'll see there's an inset there of, you see the stainless with the circles.
yeah,
That, I think that's sort of what she's thinking, because it'll play with the light really well, and not just be a straight plate that is gonna glare.
right, okay. Interesting, okay.
So that's her thinking, but of course, as we get into detailed design, she'll start playing with samples and what it really looks like and all that kind of fun stuff.
I think if you guys could see the sunlight passing through that colored cathedral glass when the sun's hitting it, it would potentially provide that pop that you're hoping to see.
Is she planning for a maquette eventually when, it sounds like, before we approve the final piece, will there be a maquette that you can see?
I don't know, we haven't discussed what shape that would take, but certainly some materials examples and better imagery showing, you know, different lighting conditions we could provide for you guys, yeah.
Okay.
At nighttime, what type of ambient lighting is in that neighborhood? That could possibly,
It's right here, just Hamlin streetlights.
just streetlights, okay. And then any cars that pass would possibly illuminate it, okay.
Will they be, I mean, the cars
Yeah, this-
wouldn't really, because it's,
up too.
yeah.
that stairwell
I'm talking
can't
about on
be
the
dark.
outside, how much lighting would there be, the ambient lighting,
Yeah.
street lights, things like that, shop lights.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the feedback we got from council, like, don't do too much light, like, the feasibility. So a lot of questions. This is, I a personal stake in this one, because this is something that's in my flow constantly. I feel better about it. It's helpful to have more context to get a sense that there is gonna be some contour, and it's just gonna be like a massive plate of steel with some perforations and some, I picture something much smaller, so, but the
Yeah.
idea of larger,
yeah, these
yeah, it seems good.
Okay.
All right, any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I would just recommend, because of the the architectural review board's comment about wanting to make the building a little more exciting. If in that final slide, you can give more information about how high the reliefs are gonna be, I think that would be really helpful. And particularly your description about how the light's gonna hit and sort of reflect light, I think that would be really helpful.
I'm going to throw one other comment out to the ARB. It feels like that the building is so in contrast to the Burj Clark style that the idea of trying to pick up the color palette, to me, doesn't really work. And I might just blow up that whole idea, and it might be more fun to do something that is, because those tiles are so subtle, it's like, I don't know, 20 feet, and this is 40 feet. I mean, it's really high, those fins, and maybe a different color treatment. Not that they asked for that input, but.
Whack the dog.
As we try and keep the ARB out of the art too.
Okay.
Whack the dog.
All right, I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, collection maintenance. We have a small budgetary thing for irrigation landscape for the piece at Rinconada Library.
Which is the oldest piece in the collection that's cited outdoors. It wasn't the first piece. People misconstrue that as it was the first commission piece. It's not. It is the oldest piece, though, in the collection that's cited outdoors.
What's the first one?
I don't recall,
You throw that out
actually.
there, you're not gonna tell us?
You have no idea the day I've had. But I will find out for you.
So is this something we need to protect the piece because it's sprinklers?
Thank you, Liz, for this introduction. So let me provide a little bit of a background of this piece and its current location. So Newton Steel was created in 1967 by Swiss-American sculptor Hans Wehrli. The artist was teaching at Stanford and then lived in Palo Alto. And Newton Steel, in fact, was one of several sculptures by Wehrli exhibited here in City Hall in the lobby and outside on King Plaza. After that exhibition, in a few years after that, the piece was purchased by the city as part of the this country's bicentennial celebration. And the following year, it was installed in the lobby of City Hall, where it spent the next few years. Later on, in the a decade later, it was moved to then main library, and it changed a couple of sites there. So right now the image shows its current location, where it's been since 1993. Since its tenure began at Rinconada Library, the piece received several preventative and routine maintenance treatments. It was repainted twice, the first time in '93 after it was relocated to that site, and the second time the piece received a more robust conservation treatment. It was treated for rusted areas and covered with special anti-rust paint material. The images on this slide were taken just earlier this week, and you can see that currently the piece shows several areas of visible rusting. So this rust is caused mainly by a sprinkler that pops up right behind the piece daily and sprays against her. And Elise will show you like the trajectory of that sprinkler across her back and her right elbow. A couple of years ago, if you recall, in 2015, we conducted a comprehensive condition evaluation for the collection, and Newton steel was, in fact, among the 15 priority pieces that were conditioned by the commission, by the conservators. So in their recommendation, they provide a recommendation stating that the artwork should be either relocated to a different site or the sprinkler system has to be modified to prevent further rusting in the future. So public art staff has been in consultation both with library staff and our colleagues in parks and open spaces. And together we determined that the best possible solution for the sculpture would be not to relocate her, but to address the sprinkler system around her. So the current sprinkler will be replaced by a more environmentally friendly and effective drip irrigation system. And the immediate area around the piece will be enhanced with a new landscape, which will echo in its plant palette the vegetation and grasses leading to the library in that, especially that northern entrance to the piece. So we reached out to contractor whom we worked with in the past on a similar project and obtained a quote of $7,000 to install new modern drip irrigation system and install new landscape around the piece. And if in a couple of more detailed shots with affected areas. And this slide shows it's that triangle which will be modernized with a new irrigation system and a new landscape around the piece. So today we are here to ask the Commission to approve funding for this irrigation landscaping project. Thank you.
Can I quickly ask you, do you want to comment first?
I was just gonna add that if you notice the light there, the light has been, because they try and mow that area, the light has also been a constant issue because they always hit it with the mower and we have to get electricians out there to rehook it up. So by putting the new plantings in, it will end that cycle as well.
Right, the light will be protected as well, and we'll work to install new light fixture in front of the sculpture.
Okay, so new plantings, landscaping, new light fixture, and then also we're conserving the piece. That's in that bid as
Exactly.
well,
So
right?
the scope of $7,000 covers just the new irrigation and landscaping around the piece. Currently, we are reaching out to a number of metal conservators and professionals to provide us with a quote for the conservation project of the piece, but that budget will be much lower, much smaller than this ask.
Okay, and what did we pay for the piece back in 86, or was it 76?
76.
I have to consult with the archives.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
What, is it iron that it's made out of?
It's steel,
Steel, okay.
galvanized steel.
Galvanized steel. Okay.
We couldn't just get rid of the one sprinkler? It seems like, I mean, it's nice to re-landscape
So-
it, but that's a lot of our
You-
budget.
You know, that was our first thought. Can we just shut down that sprinkler? Well, unfortunately, it's a one-off sprinkler that sprays over a large area, much further across the sculpture. So if we disable that sprinkler, it will affect a large portion of that lawn. So we have to replace, that area with a different like irrigation solution.
And Parks is covering.
And yes, and parks, yes, so part of our collaboration with our parks colleagues is they will be taking on the removal of the existing sprinkler and installment of two new sprinklers sort of on both ends of that triangle landscape area.
But that's in addition to the 7,000, which is just us.
So that project they'll be covering that, yes.
Okay.
And the library staff is thrilled that the sculpture will remain at its current siting, because everybody thought that it would be very unfair to move her elsewhere.
There's still someone who likes to leave flowers on her regularly. Yeah, people really love her.
She has
We get phone
admirers.
calls about concerns about the rust, and we've promised people, we're working on it, we'll get to it.
Yes,
I guess I have a couple questions.
sure.
I think it's beautiful. I guess, so is it not possible to refabricate it in like a more resistant steel? Like we do like with Go Mama, like recast it, or, you know what I mean? And the other thing is, like, when you landscape around it, will people have access to it?
Those are great questions. The artist is no longer living. It's a handmade piece, and so recreating it, we'd lose the piece. And as for the landscaping, we can definitely work with parks to figure out if we have stepping stones or if it's parsley planted enough that someone could go up to it. The landscaping around the library that they put in that's new, that's low irrigation use, I think it'll be pretty friendly for that, but that's a good point, and we can make sure that there's still access to it.
Okay, and do we have a motion to approve?
I move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you for being patient, for 429 University.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Come on, yes, this is the hot seat, and when you speak, make sure you push the button so that the microphone's on, so you can both share that one. So this is 429 University Avenue. This is a public art and private development final review of public artwork by Albert de Crutalo. I don't know, I haven't pronounced his last name before. Is Laura? No, Laura isn't with us. So we have the applicants here to make a presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening, commissioners. Elise, thanks for the presentation, for the introduction. My name is Jaime Wong. I am the applicant. I don't know if you're familiar with the location, so maybe I should start with
It's a
that.
DWR building, right?
It is the Design Within Reach building. And the several storefronts next to it on University Avenue. We've owned that building for a long time, and we always thought that it was a perfect location to put something at some point more fitting with the university downtown location. The site is unique in the sense that it's in a corner, University Avenue on one side, Kipling Street going up north, and then there's an alley behind the building. And there is not a whole lot of attraction in the area as far as art goes. And we found a spot towards the back of the building, but not really the back, because it really is the front entrance to the upper floors. And there is a glass enclosed stairwell. And this piece will be suspended outside the stairwell above the ground about, we don't know exactly how tall, but probably 13 to 15 feet up. When we talk to the, let's see if we can go to like, I don't know what page it is, like,
Just keep scrolling.
try
Stop.
like 19, page 19 or something like that.
This is, well, don't you want to go through there?
We'll come back to that. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
it's okay.
We were talking about the location of this one. I think you've all seen the package, so you know what. So, okay. So let's move farther, that one there. Okay. So there we are. We're looking at that corner here. And Kipling Street is on the left side, and the alley is on the right side, and University is the other side of the building. And there's this, a member of the Architectural Review Board described this as a jewel box, the glass enclosed stairwell going up there, which we believe will get quite a bit of use because a lot of the younger people today just don't use elevators anymore. They just want to march up the stairs and down. And the art piece is drawn in place there. You can't see all of it because it has 3 pieces to it. There are like 3 oval interlocking pieces. The first one rising up from about the floor of the second floor, and then the 2 other ones branching off from that. And what the artist had seen when he looked at this place is he says, you know, it's a beautiful location for various reasons. One is that it is at an intersection between the hustle and bustle of University Avenue and the quiet character of Kipling Street. And on top of that, the alley is really utilitarian. It's, I don't know if you've been through there, but it's like, that's where the garbage trucks come by, and unfortunately, a lot of people try and sleep there at night. So this building will kind of dress up that corner, for one thing. But the other thing is the location of the art will bring interest to the people who walk by, to the cars who drive by, and to the bicyclists who like to cut through the alley in the back. Not shown in the picture are 4 trees that we will be planting to replace the sad-looking trees right now on Kipling Street. And on the back of the building, that flat area covering the first and the second floor in the middle, there's going to be a planter area rising from there along the wall. So there are going to be touches of green. So now you're presented with a building that's concrete, glass, some touches of steel, and some greenery. And the artist thought, well, you know, I want to show something that is like taking flight. Like that's the first thought he had, was rising from the ground, midair, something very light. The shapes are sort of reminiscent of maybe propellers, maybe wings of an airplane. And for permanence, after having talked about the rusted lady, this is stainless steel. So presumably it's not going to rust if it's done right. Not a shiny stainless steel, more of a burnished, kind of a brush finish. And so, well, before I leave this, are there any questions about the location? You're pretty fixed in your mind where it is.
Location, I know. What's the, can you describe what's in the building once it's done on the different levels?
The building, as approved right now, has retail on the ground floor, and then offices on the second floor. And then on the third floor, there are 3 apartments. And that top level is another little office, offset to the back, covering about maybe a third of the floor space.
Okay.
And then there's a terrace
And does
towards
the
the
retail
University
wrap
Avenue.
Kipling through University all around?
Not all around. It goes, you see that portico on, sorry, I don't have a,
Yeah.
thanks, Elise, for being my pointer. That portico is the entrance, the lobby to the offices upstairs, as well as to the elevator going up to the apartments
Got it, okay.
and upstairs. So the retail stops at the portico.
Okay, so it does wrap around the corner a bit.
It does
It's
wrap around the
it's
corner.
like the first third of the building.
Exactly. Maybe a little more than a third, maybe half.
How did you decide on the placement of the piece to do it there as opposed to closer to the entrance on Kipling?
Well, here's the deal. First of all, University Avenue is kind of out. The real estate is just too expensive to do anything there.
Well,
So there were
but
2
when
choices.
When you attached it, you kind of attached it above
Right,
grade.
and that was a tricky move. The other option that we had presented the artist with, there's a balcony right above the portico, the entrance to the building.
Right.
And we suggested he could put something there if he wanted to, but he wanted something more open, less constrained. And the corner, he loved it because he says, it's just open. It's great, so it can take flight from there. And in fact, he called the piece Avigation, which he thought was reminiscent of aviation, navigation, finding your way, discovering new things.
This is kind of a good.
So, yeah, if we're okay with the location, then we can go back to the views of the artwork.
Or to Albert's sample artwork, is that what you
No,
wanted
I wanted to see the picture of Albert first.
to do? Okay, there you go.
This guy's a character. So we discovered him because we originally had approached Bruce Beasley, who I think you're all familiar with his work here in the city. And Bruce was game in the beginning, and then he thought about it further, and he said, I'm going to decline, but I can recommend Albert. Albert apprenticed with Bruce, and so he knows the Bruce Beasley techniques. But he has his own, he loves to do 3D modeling on the computer and stuff like that, so that's our artist. He likes to make shapes with metal, steel, bronze, aluminum. Okay, now let's scroll down to his work. Okay, so there is, that's our first view of the work when the artist presented us with it. He said, I'm looking at interlocking wings with holes in them. And I said, well, that's interesting. How big is it going to be? So he said, it's about larger than man size. It's going to be 10 feet tall. And it'll be impressive in the corner, especially as you walk closer to it. And if you're going to suspend it in air, you can see it from all the way around as well as in the bottom. And as an added bonus, the people going up the stairs can see it from the windows also and get a different view of that as well. And the other nice thing about the location is that stairwell is going to be lit up all day and night for safety. So there will be like glow from that jewel box onto the art piece. It'll be casting shadows on the street. As well, this corner, because of its location, will get afternoon sun and a little bit of morning sun, depending on how big the trees grow and exactly where they're placed. But it'll get quite a bit of afternoon sun. So that was the thinking behind the art piece and the location. If any questions about that? It's not still clear to me the exact orientation of it. And maybe, I'm guessing that Albert hasn't worked that out yet, but he will. How exactly, which piece sticks out where. But that's the idea.
Excuse me 1 sec. I just want to.
Yes, of course.
Elise, can you just cover what's our action item for our action for tonight? Just to
To approve or not approve?
approve or not approve, right? Okay.
You can approve, or you can ask the applicant to come back, or you can approve with conditions.
Okay. Great.
But it's
Just
a
wanna clarify
final
on it.
review and private development,
Okay.
which is an action item.
Thank you. Just wanted to.
Comments or questions? I like the piece. I hate the location, I'll be honest with you. I think it looks like you kind of put an antenna on the side of the building. I would love to see it on the ground. Is there enough space to put it on the ground?
Space there is, but the ground already has, what happens is that there is the city requires you to collect rainwater before it's discharged into the street, and that collector is there, as well as there's a grease trap for in case business gets bad and I have to put a restaurant there, which I really don't want to. But if that happens, they'll need a grease trap, and that's there as well. So
Okay.
if we put that there,
So
there's
there's
no
not enough,
access to those two
there's not enough
things.
square footage to put it kind of in the same area, but put it on the ground, somewhere in here.
That's correct.
It's narrow, huh?
It's about 10 feet,
10 by 5.
yeah. And I apologize, but I forgot to introduce Peter Coe, who is our architect. I'm the architect for the project. I'm here to support. If you have any question
Microphone.
about the building, I can definitely explain it to you. That's the only, that space was the only open space. It's completely open. Only corner was open to sky, and the rest of the buildings are pretty much touched the property line. And
So you can't protrude, so if you were to do it, because it's suspended in the air, so
So-
you couldn't have done it, if you were to do it, I know the artist wanted to do it in the corner, but if you were to do it on Kipling, you can't protrude into the airspace over the sidewalks?
So I know that's building code requirement for you have to at least 8 feet tall, higher, so people cannot touch the art piece. And so that's why we suspended up to on the second floor concrete slab. So there's an arm coming out from the concrete slab, kind of catching it, and then just like an arm putting that piece up. And then that will be a probably different color in contrasting or make it disappear or contrast. I'm not sure because I think the artist is still working on this piece. And even like Jaime was saying, the even orientation of the art piece, we haven't really decided yet.
Okay.
But it will, I'm pretty sure the edge of the sculpture will be at least to the sidewalk edge. So because the opening of the alleyway, doesn't matter you're walking down from both sides, University toward Lipton, or you're walking down from Lipton to University, you will see the piece pretty, because the 20-foot alley plus 10 feet
Setback.
of the setback of the building, and then the terrace on the back of the alley was stepping back. So you kind of create that void space for this vertical piece. It's kind of like 10 feet tall and then 5 feet horizontal. So I think it's kind of interesting, and then all the tower behind it, it's all glass. So it's a slab to slab glass. It's all transparent, clear glass, so you can see through. I mean, yeah.
Can you just explain what the coloring of the building is going to be like? Because one thing I will tell you, I mean, I like the concept, the idea of the sculpture, but I just feel it's a little bland, and I think maybe it could use some color, some more.
This building is simplicity. It's the building. I mean, just all glass. So you have concrete slabs and columns. Those are all serve as a structural element. So nothing is. Only the glass was everything else from floor to slab to the ceilings. It's all glass. So that's like 15 feet from first floor to the second floor. The slab thickness is 12 inches, and then the rest of it's all glass from floor to ceiling. And then second floor is the same thing, but that's a stairwell going all the way up to the third floor. In our design, we have that's a special custom stair. It's all just steel and glass. And then there's special lighting inside. So that it's almost like a sculpture piece of itself, marking that corner. The entry, the portico over there is the entry to the office on the second floor, also to the units on the third floor. So that's a major entry piece, yeah.
As far as the colors go, the first and second floor concrete, integral color concrete. And then the third floor and above will have a different color, so that it's sort of an architectural bump, if you will, a feature that says, you know, here's one function, and then here's something else that recedes a little bit, is set back, and it's a different color and a different function.
I'm thinking kind of this building is gonna be a lot different than a lot of the buildings, although things are starting to change in downtown Palo Alto.
That is correct.
But I mean, I feel like if you were to, if this was you wanted to make this say a destination, like how would like the artwork, if you were to say like, go to this piece or find, and we're at this place or this, I'm just kind of overthinking, like meet at the
Okay.
red ball or
Well-
the gigantic red balloon or something.
You and I are
Like, what is
thinking-
something that you could, I think that this could potentially be something like a destination, but what is that destination? I don't quite
Yeah.
see it yet, so.
Yeah, I understand. And my initial feeling is that the building itself is artwork. This is a building that has no pretense, there's no layering, it's very honest. The concrete is the structure. There's no sheetrock in front of it or anything like that, no stone cladding. And the glass allows you to look in and see the bones, see what's going on inside. And I think the artwork sort of punctuates that because it says, look, I'm taking off from here, I'm different. The building is all straight lines, all concrete and steel, and I am soft curves and I'm not solid, I'm in motion, that sort of a thing. And it sort of punctuates the transition between University Avenue and the rest of the block.
I'm just curious, I would agree with what you say about the building itself. I find the art a little distracting, so I'm just curious, but every person you ask will have a different opinion about that. I was just curious if you considered at all contributing the cost to, like, contributing the cost of the art to a city in lieu fund instead of
That,
adding an art element to the building.
thanks for bringing that up.
That was, first of all, Albert loves the sculpture, and so do we. You know, it could have been a situation where one of the two doesn't like the sculpture. But as it happens, I really love it. It has been like an extreme challenge to put this heavy thing suspended in the air. And the way that they did it was to structurally move this little wing out of the floor and then make it attach this thing up in the air. Because Albert did not want a base, you know. And the other things he thought it was distracting, cables, you know, other attachments he didn't want. So this is what he wanted, and we really like his work. I think that we have some slides of other works that he has done. I'm also very excited about the location because as in the parking garage at Hamilton and Waverly, the pieces that Amy put, they're all second floor and up, you know. So it is a little bit different. Here are all these arts that sit on the ground and they're great, you know. But in downtown, you know, university at this location, you have to be creative, you know.
There were things that we hadn't thought about, things like, geez, what happens in an earthquake? Will this thing swing enough to hit the glass? And what happens in a strong wind? You know, you're talking about these things being like propellers. What, you know, if a strong wind makes it move, what's going to happen? So all that, we had to hire an engineer who engineered all this, and I think it's going to be worth putting it there.
How is it being attached to the building and keeping sort of, accommodating the concerns that you mentioned?
So what I've seen and from what I understand, from the ceiling, the slab, that is the ceiling of the first floor and floor of the second floor, there will be an arm sticking out. That arm is going to be embedded into the concrete. So it has to fight for space with all the rebar
The
inside
arm's
the
gonna be
concrete.
an I-beam.
I-beam?
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
yeah, it's the structure engineering.
I don't know if you,
sketch.
I don't think you got that in your package, did you?
It is here. Do they have it?
We,
I don't
no,
think so.
we didn't give them the
I
structural,
don't
the
think-
calculations
I
and
don't
that
think you
level
needed
of
to see it.
detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there are 30 pages of calculations and stuff to get that done.
the arm. So it's anchored into the
Into the
12-inch
concrete, and
slab.
the
So
the
that's why we
sculpture's
need to
resting on that one point.
concept approved, so we can put the steel inside the slab for the future production of that piece.
But that
During
piece
touch.
only sits on this,
That's right.
and that's
One point of attachment, no cables.
only
no-
one point of
So it
attachment,
has
and
to be
that's.
rigid enough to,
It's like a floating object.
Interesting.
So those.
and he didn't want it
those-
above hanging, because that would show that it's not taking flight. He wanted it standing up.
Commissioner Shen,
Interpretation
yeah.
of the attachment.
just to make sure you know, the sculpture, the public art also has to be permitted and go through the building. So they have to submit their engineered drawings and their calculations for building to sign off on it. So those safety concerns will definitely be addressed.
Yeah, that's all I needed.
Thank
for it to
you.
fall down on somebody, right?
Right.
Together with the building, I like the sculpture taking flight. I mean, if I was just to happen, when I saw the first renderings, I was like, okay, so where is it going? What's happening? And, yeah, along with the building, I like the way it takes flight. I understand why you placed it where you did, because there isn't a lot of space there. But I do wonder how often it will be seen, especially from people walking down University Avenue. Those are my comments.
I mean, I would ask that you guys really consider just doing it in lieu thing. I feel like it's just, it's a beautiful building, and I don't feel like it contributes. I mean, I realize everyone gets attached to the pieces that they have, but I don't feel like it contributes to the building. I don't think like it's almost like a negative. So, I mean, it's a very elegant structure. I love that it's slabs to ceiling glass. I think it's gorgeous. It just feels like something that's done to comply. And I know that's not the intent, because you had a lot of other constraints to kind of the way you kind of work things out. But I feel like a building that's going to be really prominent on University Avenue, like it's a great location. It's kind of in the alley, and it just doesn't feel like it fits very well. So that would be that's my 2 cents.
I kind of have some of your reactions, but the other thing, in seeing how it's being attached and sort of the whole wing element of it, if it's done right, in my mind, it could have the effect of a butterfly kissing a metal building. It could have that very sort of whimsical light effect to it, because it is so much concrete, so much glass. Then you've got the Apple building nearby. Like visually, when you're walking down these streets, you're seeing glass and, like these very sort of measured elements. And to have metal done in such a light manner and have it done in sort of an anti-gravitational effect, it could have the effect of a butterfly kissing a building.
All right, any other comments or feedback?
But I would add, I hope this was the intended design, not a compromise. Because, oh, good.
We had other choices for artists. Because Bruce Beasley knows quite a few artists, men and women. And we visited them, talked to them, and saw their art. And some of them were very concrete and realistic sculptures. Some of them were very abstract. This was a choice. And luckily, we really like Albert. And I think that the piece would appreciate in value, because I love it that much. So I think that the idea of having art on University Avenue is very rare. that's because it's almost like a train station, and you can't have landscaping in a train station type of thing. So luckily, we could do this, you know, it could have all, you know, we could have been in a situation where we could not have an art, you know.
So I'm just curious, is this the first time that we're looking at this building? I don't remember.
This building has been through a long journey and many design revisions. So it did come to the commission, I
There
have
was
to look
something
back
in the lobby, there was something you guys had.
at the date, and they were initially exploring having something inside the lobby space, potentially a mural or something in the lobby space. There was some concerns that that would not feel public enough. So the building, you're correct, the building has gone through a lot of changes since the last time you saw this project. And so, so here we are.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstained, what's the final?
Well, I have stipulations, so.
How many do we have in support?
I'm in support,
Okay,
yes.
I'm gonna abstain also, so we have,
Okay, so hang on, just for record keeping.
Yes.
Okay, so I had Vice Chair Miyagi moved, Commissioner Shen
Shen
second,
second.
and then in support, if you would please. Okay, so Commissioners Gordon and Ross,
Shen and
Yep.
Miyagi.
right, but they made the motion, and then you're abstaining? Okay, and Commissioner Taylor?
Abstain.
All right.
Well, I want to thank you for your
Thank you.
time, for looking at the project, and, you know, we really have the best of intentions, and, you know, we're really, really excited about the building as well as the art.
That's great, that's
Great.
exciting. I know it's been a long slog for you guys, so congratulations, it's exciting.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll be in touch soon with a letter for the building department.
I think the whole architectural thing is going to be, that's going to be a lot of work. Anti-gravitational.
Oh, yes. There.
No, I mean, that's not our job, right? But I
Right.
would imagine for you guys to do that, it's a big job.
They're on the right track though.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, thank
And
you
the
very much.
10 feet,
Okay, our,
yes, move ahead. I'll take this while you're going, moving on.
thanks. All right, so our next piece is a non-action item about something that, Nia, you raised last month about sites available for viewing examples of public art, and I think it's intended to just have a discussion. And, go ahead. I guess, so part of the context, so I actually put something together myself, and I think, did you ever circulate it?
Oh, God, did I?
Yeah, so anyway, it's not a big deal. So, but I think that I did it with just, Jim's spending a couple hours browsing around on the web and finding stuff that I liked and adding it to Pinterest. And I did some landscape art, this is a while ago, is when and I think that the tricky thing is, that some of those things are, just stuff that may not be buildable, and it's not officially sanctioned by Americans for the Arts. And so we had a little discussion about it, at least just as we're kind of prepping for this meeting, that Americans for the Arts has all kinds of reference stuff. And so I think it's okay if we individually, as a commissioner, like, hey, I have some ideas. Is it okay if an individual commissioner were to share something with someone and say, hey, here's some of the stuff that I like, but then officially as a body to use the reference points that you guys have gathered here, which are, sanctioned and recognized, and, a lot of them have won awards and are a more, I don't want to say non-ecumenical approach to thinking about the question.
I think that's an interesting question, because if commissioners start having side conversations with applicants about what their particular likes are, it could potentially be problematic and need to be disclosed, or you would have to recuse yourself.
Okay.
So, we did put together this list of resources, and we do point developers toward these when they come to us and say, well, don't you just have some ideas for artists you can give me? Of course, we always recommend, first of all, that they hire a public art consultant, because there's always a lot more work involved than they realize getting in.
Or that they pay the in-lieu fee.
There's that, which we love it when that happens.
Yes.
And then also at the bottom of the list, you'll notice the public artist pre-qualified pool. So we do, which we will refresh again this summer, but we do utilize those for private development and pull some of those artists as potentials for projects to consider. So, so we do offer a lot of eye candy in each of these sites. We can forward this list to any of you who want to go visit, but there's lots of great stuff on there. Americans for the Arts, we're really excited since we've
We're
got
in
some
there
stuff
now.
front and center now, so we're quickly becoming part of the canon. But these are all great resources, so that's sort of where this conversation came up. I'm happy to forward the Pinterest board to you all with the sign-in that Jim sent me, and I'm sorry I forgot to circulate it, but,
So like, for example, I found, was in LA, a couple of times, and in that area, Southern California, I saw some really interesting stained glass, works of art that I wanted to kind of get people to think about. So like, should I share it with you first, and then you can share it with the commissioners? Is that how do you want
yeah,
it?
so
Okay.
and that goes for anything, interesting articles or resources or anything that a particular commissioner wants to share with all the commissioners, you can either send it to Nadia or myself, and we could circulate it to the broader commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would love to see, I take pictures of public art when I'm traveling, and I think it's really fun to share that, so I'd love to have that shared, and if we want to put it on Pinterest. I don't know how you feel about that.
It could be
you know?
something that just for fun, I mean, for fun and for like, for discussion purposes, that's
It's
something that we
helpful.
use internally.
Yeah, it is really
yeah.
helpful, actually, if you get ideas.
All right, so externally facing stuff, these sources, internal for points of discussion. Pinterest is just one, I kind of think it's easy to use. And the credentials, any of us can add stuff, and you can comment on it and, you know.
Forwarding it now.
All right. Any other announcements?
I have a quick question. In lieu funds,
Yes.
Yes.
can we have a discussion item or possibly a retreat item about in lieu funds? And I don't know how much is in there now and how we're looking to possibly use it in the future. I know that, but you've had a few people put into in lieu, so how can we best utilize those funds in the future about a piece of public art? And maybe this all ties into what we're talking about right here.
Yeah.
So, I would be happy to have that discussion. Perhaps I can share some of that with you and Chair McDowell when we're doing agenda setting, and then see if it makes sense to address it in a regular meeting, or if it's more of a retreat topic.
I just have a quick announcement to make. I'm sure you all remember Barbara Goldstein. She helped us create our master plan, and she will be speaking The Art of Making Space Public. That is it's the title of her lecture, and it is on Wednesday, April 25th at 4:15 at the Cantor Arts Center. I'm going to attend that lecture, so if anyone wants to join me. There is a fee, $25 for members of the Cantor Arts Center or $30 for non-members, but I think it'd be great to support Barbara.
What's the date again?
The date is Wednesday, April 25th. Yeah.
And you reminded me, actually, I'm going to see Judy Chicago, who's going to be at the Bing, and I forget the date. I could look it up, but
I think it's the 21st.
if you haven't seen any of her work, she does some really fascinating.
Yes, she's very thoughtful.
And has an exhibit up, I believe, at the Brooklyn Museum right now.
The dinner, that's like a permanent, right? Is that the, yeah.
And I too would love to learn more about the in lieu funds when we start after someone's that far down the road.
Yeah.
It's a tough, but yeah, you got to suggest it. I agree.
I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't look, I mean, when I was looking at the budget, it said 60,000.
Oh, I had some sort of.
And I was like, that building is not 6 million only, is it?
That's a broader discussion.
Right, that was my, I was like,
Shoot, I wish you had brought that up, because I had some sort of budget question. 'Cause I- Between reading the materials and getting here was disruptive for me, so I lost track of that. Okay.
All right, our next meeting is the 19th. For those of us working on our applications,
Oh, you are as well?
I am not.
Oh.
For those of us who are,
He's not done yet, is he?
Godspeed.
I submitted.
Good,
good.
good.
I know, get it done.
Judy Chicago is the 23rd at 8 o'clock.
8?
Oh.
Yes,
Yeah,
April.
It's not until April, but I don't think 8 o'clock. Is she really at 8?
I think that's 6:30, I think.
I
Oh,
think
is it?
she's
I may have
earlier.
the time wrong in my calendar.
I have 6:30.
It's not sold out, and it's free.
All right, we're officially adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank